All right, today we're doing a full audit on your most critical resource. And no, it's not your money, it's not even your time, it's your attention. You've been sold this idea that more information is power. We're here to flip that script completely. True power lies in knowing what to ignore. It's time to stop being a passive consumer and start being an active architect of your own mind. This quote, man, it just perfectly captures the crazy paradox we're all living in, right? You're scrolling and scrolling, thinking the next article, the next podcast is going to be the one that finally makes it all click. But it never does. And that's not an accident. This isn't a path to growth. It's a very, very well-designed trap.
And here's something you've got to understand right off the bat. This is not your fault. This isn't a personal failing or a lack of willpower. This is a systemic problem. The prison we're talking about isn't one you built. It was built around you, designed from the ground up to keep you consuming, to keep you processing.
So let's give this enemy a name. Let's call it what it is: information colonization. Think about that. It's an active process. It's the relentless harvesting of your most precious assets, your mental energy, and your finite time. Every second you spend on low-value noise is a second that's literally been stolen from you.
It's kind of wild when you think about it. We've completely flipped the script on what humanity is afraid of. For centuries, our ancestors' biggest fear was not having enough information. Now, we're being destroyed by the exact opposite. The system doesn't need to censor the truth anymore. It can just bury it under a mountain of worthless, distracting garbage.
So in this new system, what role do you play? Well, the term for it is a data peasant. And yeah, it sounds harsh, but think about it. You're performing unpaid digital labor for these giant attention-grabbing systems. And what do you get paid in? Tiny little squirts of low-grade dopamine that keep you scrolling for just one more minute. This right here is the key shift in understanding. You might feel like you're just a passive observer, just watching the world go by on your screen, but you're not. You've been turned into a biological processor, a cog in a massive digital machine that you don't control, and trust me, it does not have your best interests at heart.
And where does this all lead? Well, the outcome is pretty bleak. The idea is that by age 45, the data peasant is basically a ghost. Their head is full of trivia, a huge library of random facts, but not one single gram of actual wisdom. They've been busy their whole life, but they haven't built a thing.
Okay, enough of the bad news. This is a diagnosis, but it is not a terminal one. There is an escape hatch. So let's pivot from the problem to the solution. There is a way to reclaim your mental sovereignty.
To do that, we have to start by asking the right question. If just consuming more stuff isn't the answer, then what is? In a world where everything is screaming for attention, how do you even measure what actually matters? We need a completely new way to think about this. And here it is. Now I know what you're thinking. An equation? Don't worry, you don't need to solve it. Just think of it as a mental model. This is the wisdom density equation. It's the real currency of a sovereign mind. It's not about how much you know. It's all about the quality of what you know compared to all the noise you had to wade through to get it. Let's break it down. So let's look at the pieces. D quality is the good stuff, the deep, high-value insights, those real aha moments. And volume, well, that's all the noise, the endless junk food for your brain. Now, delta S, this is your secret weapon, strategic silence. This is the intentional time you carve out to actually think, to let ideas connect. And T, well, that's the big one. That's your lifespan. The clock is ticking.
Now just think about our modern world for a second. That variable on the bottom, N volume, the noise, it's not just big, it's constantly expanding. For all practical purposes, it's basically approaching infinity.
So here is the brutal mathematical reality of our time. When the denominator in a fraction, the noise, goes to infinity, the entire value of the equation goes to zero. Your wisdom density collapses. The more you consume without thinking, the less you actually know. You are literally being diluted by data. So, to fight this, to invert this terrible ratio, we need a plan. We need a protocol. This is a set of concrete, actionable steps to take back your time and your attention. And we're calling it the Chronos Protocol.
First things first, you've got to understand that there are two kinds of time. Most of us live in Chronos, that's machine time. Quantitative, linear, just 1 second after another. You're always just reacting to the clock. The goal is to shift into Kairos, that's sovereign time. It's qualitative, it's opportune. It's where you stop being a slave to the clock and you become its master. You don't just spend time, you utilize it. So The Chronos Protocol has 3 core steps. Number 1, the information embargo. You strategically fast from new input. Number 2, you build a monastic focus architecture. You start treating your attention like it's sacred. And number 3, you establish a Kairos anchor to measure your day by what actually moves the needle.
Here's a super practical way to build that monastic focus. It's called the 90-90-1 rule, and it is dead simple and totally non-negotiable. For the next 90 days, the first 90 minutes of your day are sacred. They belong to the single most important task, the one thing that will define your legacy. No email, no social media, no news. Just deep, undistracted work.
So what's the end game here? Why go through all this trouble? This isn't about being more productive in that machine time sense. This is about building something that lasts. This is about your architectural legacy.
And that brings us to our final way of thinking about this, the legacy yield. This is how you measure the quality of a single day. Just picture a scale. On one side, you have deep insight and mental clarity. On the other side, you have all the noise you let into your head. Your only job every single day is to tip those scales, ruthlessly cut the noise to maximize the insight. When you do that, your life stops being a race and starts becoming a monument.
And this is the ultimate identity shift. This is what we're aiming for. You transition from being a passive consumer of all the world's noise to an active creator of clarity. You know, the most powerful thing you can be in an age of total noise is to be the silence that the system just can't figure out.
So I'll just leave you with this choice, because every single minute of every day, you're making it. Are you the fuel being burned up in someone else's furnace? Or are you the disciplined architect, patiently laying one brick at a time, building a cathedral that will last? The choice, as always, is yours. Have you ever felt like you're just drowning in this endless ocean of information, but at the same time, you're starving for any real clarity? Well, the source we're digging into today argues that this feeling, it isn't an accident. It says it's a core feature of our world, something it calls the biological tyranny of time. But, and this is the important part, it also offers a way out.
Right off the bat, this quote gets to the absolute heart of the argument. It's a pretty jarring idea, right? The thought that in this digital world, our most precious resource, our attention, our actual consciousness, is being systematically mined. We're not the ones in charge anymore. We are literally a resource being harvested.
And this leads to what the source calls a clinical diagnosis for this condition, the Data Peasant. It's a very specific term for anyone who's trading their finite, irreplaceable minutes for these quick, low-grade dopamine hits from their screens. It completely reframes scrolling. It's not leisure anymore. It's more like unpaid labor for what this source calls the attention hegemony.
So what are the symptoms of being a data peasant? The source uses a pretty heavy term, the ontological decay of focus. I know, it's a mouthful, but the concept is actually simple. It means our fundamental ability to concentrate, to create, to just be, is being broken down and basically liquidated. So let's break down exactly how this happens.
The very first part of this process is the atomization of your attention. Just think about how you consume information all day. It's almost never in these long, deep dives, right? It's fragmented. It's shattered into these tiny little pieces. A notification here, a quick scroll there. Your focus is constantly being broken apart. And here's the really crucial part. It's not just broken apart, it's being atomized into these tiny 15-second bursts. And you have to understand, this is so much more than just a bad habit. This is neurologically rewiring our brains. We are literally being conditioned for distraction, which makes deep, sustained thought harder and harder to achieve. And the result of all this constant rewiring is, well, it's profound. The source says that what's happening is your legacy capital is bleeding dry. And what is that? It's your potential. It's your ability to build something meaningful, something that actually lasts. Every single moment you spend in that shallow, distracted state is a moment you can't invest in real, deep, creative work. And this, well, this is the profile it paints of the end result, the functional narcissist. Now, this isn't about vanity in the classic sense. No, it describes someone whose entire reality has just shrunk to what's immediate, what's urgent, and ultimately what's irrelevant. They lose the brain power for what the source calls deep architecting. You know, that ability to plan and create for the long term. Their brain is just overwritten. They end up with a library of data, but not a single gram of wisdom. Okay, so we've seen the symptoms, but what's the actual biological reason for all this? The argument here is that we've essentially become processors for a giant machine that we don't even own. And it all boils down to how our biology is clashing with modern technology.
At the very core of this is a concept called neural entropy. See, your brain has this master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, that keeps your whole biology in rhythm. But the constant blue light, the endless pings, the algorithmic feed, it throws this clock completely out of whack. And the result? Your brain literally loses its ability to tell the difference between what's valuable and what's just noise.
And this right here really puts our modern problem into perspective. For almost all of human history, the biggest fear was a lack of information, scarcity. Today, our destruction comes from the exact opposite. It's an overwhelming surplus. The truth isn't being hidden from us, it's just being buried under a mountain of total irrelevance.
This is probably the most painful truth in the entire argument. The whole point of the attention economy isn't to help you get more done. The goal is to capture your presence, your raw, undivided attention, so that it can be packaged up and sold. You are, as the source says, the fuel in a furnace that doesn't even warm you.
Okay, so that's the diagnosis. And yeah, it's pretty bleak. But the source doesn't just leave us there. It offers a solution, a tangible, actionable plan it calls the Chronos Protocol. And this is all about actively re-engineering your relationship with time so you can build something that actually lasts.
So the whole mental shift here starts with understanding that there are two different ways of looking at time. First, there's Chronos, that's clock time. It's quantitative, seconds, minutes, hours. But then there's Kairos, and that's qualitative. It's about the right moment, the opportune time. The whole goal is to shift from just counting your minutes to actually making your moments count.
So how do you actually make that shift? Well, this protocol is built on 3 pillars. First, the information embargo, which is like strategic fasting from data. Second, monastic focus architecture, which is all about protecting your attention. And third, the Kairos anchor, which changes how you measure a successful day. Let's break each one down.
Pillar number 1 is the information embargo. Now, this isn't about becoming ignorant. It's about consolidation. The idea is to create a 4-hour digital dead zone every single day. No screens, no podcasts, not even books. The entire point is to force your brain to stop processing new stuff from the outside and start synthesizing the wisdom it already has on the inside. You're not missing out. You're consolidating. Pillar 2 is what's called monastic focus architecture, and it's built on a super simple but powerful rule, the 90-90-1 rule. For the next 90 days, you dedicate the first 90 minutes of your day with 0 distractions to the one single task that will define your legacy. It's really about starting to treat your attention like the sacred, finite resource that it is.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most profound pillar of them all. And it really just starts with this one question. After everything we've just talked about, how should you actually measure the value of your day? I mean, is it really about how many tasks you manage to check off some list?
The protocol argues for a totally radical shift in how we measure success. We have to move away from measuring our day by the number of tasks we complete, which is really just a measure of how busy we were. Instead, we should measure it by something called insight density, the quality and the depth of the wisdom we were able to generate. It's a complete shift from quantity to quality.
And this is what the source calls the legacy yield equation. Now, don't get hung up on the formula itself. The really crucial takeaway here is the relationship between the pieces. To increase your legacy yield, you have to maximize 2 things: the depth of your insights and the stability of your own mind, having that still mind. And at the same time, you have to be absolutely ruthless about minimizing the one thing that works against both of them: data noise.
And all of this brings us to the ultimate choice. Because the path you choose in your relationship with information, well, that determines your future. It's a fundamental choice between being a passive consumer of noise or becoming an active architect of silence.
And here's that choice, laid out in the starkest possible terms. On one side, you have the data peasant at age 45, a hollowed-out ghost, just full of facts but completely empty of wisdom, fuel for the furnace. And on the other side, you have the architect, the source of silence, who moves with the stillness of a cathedral and has built something that will last. According to this source, that is the only true immortality there is.
In this quote, man, it really just sums up the entire philosophy, doesn't it? In a world that literally profits from your constant distraction, the most powerful, most rebellious thing you can possibly do is to cultivate that internal stillness, to become a source of clarity that the noise machine just can't penetrate, can't compute, can't solve.
So we end with the one question this entire analysis has been building towards: a choice that's about your time, your focus, and ultimately your life. Will you be the fuel that is consumed by the system,
Or will you be the monument that you build yourself?